Thank you for downloading the BBC Radio 4 Friday Night Comedy Podcast. This week we're talking about Theresa May, the Labour Party and civil partnership. Sorry, I couldn't read the tattoo on my back. Not entirely sure why I make a note of them in that way, but there we are, it's happened now.
We present the News Quiz with your host, Miles Sharp.
Welcome to the News Quiz. We start with a review from a dissatisfied customer of an online florist, read by Corrie Caulfield.
This was supposed to be a luxury bouquet, but when it arrived, it was much more like a medium supermarket bouquet. It was for a lady at work who'd just had a baby, and she was very disappointed with it.
Thanks to James Hunter from Darvel in Ayrshire for sending that in. Now, let's meet the teams. Will you welcome first, on my right, Susan Calman and Charlie Higson. And opposite them, on my left, Sarah Kendall and Lucy Porter. Susan, who's saying bye-bye to campaigning?
There are two exciting by-elections in England this week, in Copeland and in Stoke, which will, as political commentators might say, test the temperature of the country by sticking a thermometer right up it. Now, at the time of recording of this show, we don't know who's going to have won the by-elections, but judging by recent elections, it'll either be won by the Emperor from Star Wars or Ebola. Something cheerful like that. Both are currently Labour seats, and the big discussion is, will the Conservatives win one or both of them? There's been some fairly colourful characters involved in the elections. Paul Nuttall of UKIP has suggested there's a media conspiracy out to suggest that he isn't what he says he is. And all I know is that it's just one of those things that happens when you've led such a varied life as he has. I mean, I think we all remember him standing in front of those tanks in Tiananmen Square. We all remember. The Labour candidate hasn't covered himself in glory either in Stoke. It is Gareth Snell, called the panellists on Loose Women squabbling sour-faced ladies, and described Janet Street Porter as a polished turd. Now, the interesting thing about that is that the Labour Party still think Jeremy Corbyn is the reason they're going to lose that constituency. The unknown quantity, though, I have to say, in these by-elections is Storm Doris, of course, which hit on Thursday, and that could affect the turnout. The funniest thing for me was watching the Twitter feed, because Euston Station was closed for some time, and my Twitter feed was full of journalists panicking. One BuzzFeed journalist said, our coverage of the Stoke by-election will be coming from the Nando's outside Euston. So
they were saying in Copeland they're worried about Jeremy Corbyn because of his stance on nuclear power, because, you know, he's opposed to nuclear power, he doesn't want anything to do with it, which is the same as his stance on political power, of course. They also said they're worried, Storm Doris, as you were saying, Susan, that they're worried that Storm Doris will affect things, and apparently bad weather is more likely to affect the Labour turnout, which is really... what is the science
It's just
behind
to do
that?
with the times of day that people tend to vote, apparently.
Oh, is it? I just thought it was Labour voters are lighter. Snowflakes.
I vote by post, so for just such eventualities, I always vote by post. Also to avoid people, so...
Okay, so
In Australia, it's compulsory.
to vote?
To vote, yeah. It's compulsory. You get fined if you don't go out and vote.
What an excellent country Australia is.
Well, we are the birthplace of democracy, so...
I mean, weather's always had an impact on elections. Zach Goldsmith, of course, he famously lost his seat in Richmond North because on polling day there was a formation of clouds that seemed to say, remember when Zach ran a low-key racist campaign for London Mayor? It often counts against people. So can we just... what have the big controversies been then during these two by-election campaigns we've had?
Paul Nuttall...
said things.
Yeah. The thing for Paul, you do feel sorry for him because he did lose all his family on the Titanic, but you do also...
He did those photographs recently where he was sort of dressed as a English gent with a cap and a sort of mustard waistcoat. And somebody on Twitter said he looked like one of those German spies who parachuted into Britain in the Second World War and arrested within about 20 minutes because no Englishman actually looks like him.
The reclamation by UKIP of Tweed is very unfortunate for the lesbian community. because that's essentially our Saturday night outfit. If you're going somewhere nice, you wear your tweeds. A nice three-piece suit, maybe some +4s if it's a very posh event. And now you can't because UKIP are wearing tweed all the time. And I don't want anyone to think I'm a lesbian UKIP voter. I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
Unaccountably, this is the double by-election in Stoke Central and Copeland, or as they're calling it literally nowhere, Super Thursday. The results will have been announced by the time we go to air, so who knows what kind of world you're now living in. Maybe one in which UKIP have won Stoke, maybe one in which the Tories have taken Copeland, or one in which Jeremy Corbyn has been banished to live out the rest of his days on an island, making jam and remembering the good old days when he once made a speech on a fire engine. The by-election in Stoke was called when former Stoke Central MP Tristram Hunt left the seat to take up the directorship of the V&A, an ancient and coveted position that has since time immemorial been handed down from one Tristram to the next. Copeland was seen as a two-way race between Labour and the Conservatives, who are a surprisingly popular party in Cumbria, given that their annual advice to flood victims is essentially, have you tried growing gills? Storm Doris caused havoc in the UK on Thursday, and there were concerns that it could affect voter turnout. The weather was projected to be at its worst in the evening, which is particularly troublesome for Labour, as working-class voters traditionally vote between tea and 10 p.m. Just to clarify, that is between supper and question time. 2 points. Susan. Charlie, who's peering at the bill before we leave?
This is about Game of Thrones, isn't it? Well, that's what it looked like. It's, yes, Theresa May sitting in at the House of Lords discussing Brexit, and she's sitting there, there's sort of steps in front of the Queen's throne, which looks very much like the throne in Game of Thrones. For those people who don't know what Game of Thrones is, it's a television programme. Ian McShane, who guest starred in it, basically described it as tits and dragons. But
this is how you see the House of Lords?
Well, this is that's certainly what it looked like. But there's a character in it, the Queen, Cersei, who has sort of ended up as Queen by default because everyone else around her has either been killed or thrown themselves out of a window, which is kind of what happened with Theresa May, who found herself there running the country. And Cersei is a very, very evil character. I think you implied earlier that Theresa May looked a bit like Emperor Palpatine in Star Wars.
Well, some might say that.
You know, I don't like political satire that's based on what people look like. That's not really in-depth. It always used to be, oh, John Prescott, he's so fat, isn't he? And that was the level of political satire. But Theresa May does look like she's dead. And sitting there in the House of Lords, it was like death. Death had come into the room, and she was sitting there with her hands clasped, kind of staring at them all. Like Queen Cersei in Game of Thrones, just thinking, I'm going to kill them all.
They said it was a surprise visit. Yeah. Surprise! But it wasn't like a proper surprise visit. Like a proper surprise visit would be if they'd wheeled in a large birthday cake and she'd popped out in a gold bikini singing Happy Birthday. That would have been a proper surprise.
That would have been a shock.
A shock to everyone.
That would have half emptied the place, just some
and they said,
coronaries.
I'd like it if she'd done a proper surprise, like she'd swung down from the ceiling, or if she'd ripped off a mask and kind of displayed herself.
She was David Cameron.
She was David Cameron.
She didn't stay the full distance, though, did she? No. She popped in, and then
they
debated...
went on for like 20 hours or something like that. I mean,
yeah, it went, the whole thing, it went on for 2 days. It went on till midnight both nights. Apparently it could only go on till midnight because after that's when the Lords turned back into mice.
How did it seem to you, Sarah, as someone who comes, as you famously, from the birthplace of democracy?
From the birthplace of democracy. It was just high drama, as you say. It was just so malevolent. I kind of feel like the next phase of that is sort of picking her teeth with a switchblade whilst sort of eyeballing someone while she puts out a cigarette on her tongue.
Do you know, if Theresa May put out a cigarette on her tongue, it would make me feel a lot better about her being Prime Minister. If the party political broadcast was just her going, Brexit means Brexit. I think she means that.
Yeah.
She means that.
It really does mean Brexit, doesn't it? We've had Lord Lamont. What did he say? Lovely Norman Lamont, who we've not seen of.
It's lovely, isn't it? That's what I like about watching it. Is it's like, oh, it's Norman Lamont. Oh, it's Nigel Lawson. It's like someone's taken a blowtorch to a load of old spitting image puppets.
Yeah.
You know, they're all like the same as they were in the 80s, but different. It's very good. I don't know what he said there.
They are our last resort, though, to be fair. It's like in Star Wars, where Luke Skywalker's going down that channel to get the Death Star, and there's just a small porthole, and you're like, shoot it through, Luke. That's the House of Lords. I'm shouting, shoot it through, Lords. Shoot it through.
It's exactly like the end of Xanadu. The end of Xanadu. When it's like, skate, Olivia, you got to skate.
Yes.
And they were like, if you don't, then who will? Who's going to skate?
I've not seen either of these things, but they're things that people... It sounds a bit like croquet, where people say you need to hit it through the thing. Peripherally, this is the news that the House of Lords has passed the Brexit bill at the second reading. It now goes to the committee stage, after which comes the third reading and then the swimsuit round. The debate lasted 20 hours, and I didn't miss a second of it, apart from a brief 10-hour period in the middle where I fell into a sleep so deep that I could only be roused with smelling salts, violent shaking and fire. Norman Lamont urged Lords to pass the bill. Either you believe in democracy or you do not, he told the collection of ermine-clad aristocrats, bishops and party donors. Theresa May sat in the chamber during the debate, which was seen by some as a bit heavy-handed, although it was a step down from her original plan to hover above the Lords on a wire, bellowing, "Do not disobey me, behold my vengeful wings." 2 points to Charlie. Sarah, who is saying, I don't.
Oh, yeah, this is a story about a heterosexual couple who lost their appeal to have a civil partnership. And it was denied on the grounds that they weren't a same-sex couple, so they could get married. And they felt that marriage wasn't right for them because there were so many inequalities in marriage. And I think the really important part of a story like this is whether you're gay or straight or bi, whether you're married or in a civil partnership, whoever you spend your life with is just going to drive you insane. It's great that you would aim for equality, but I just think when two humans live together, one of them will take the piss. And if you don't know who that is in your personal situation, you're the one taking the piss. You know, it starts great, it starts with romance and lots of sex, and we all end up in the same goddamn place. You know, the 5 mils of milk left in the fridge, like that's enough milk to not have to go out and buy more milk. And then you have kids, because you think we should have kids, let's have kids, and then I just think we should all be sterilised and live in mud huts and just wait for the species to die out.
Yeah, well...
I'm sorry, Mars, I've just been through half term, all right?
To me, I would be questioning my relationship if, rather than get married, my partner would want to go to the High Court. You know, I'll never forget the day my husband got down on one knee and asked the question every woman dreams of hearing: would you like to get embroiled in a time-consuming and costly legal battle to make a point about equality? I think there is a point to it, and I do understand that you want something that doesn't have all that kind of baggage of the patriarchy. But on the other hand, if you get married, you do get to wear a nice dress and people give you presents.
That's what I liked about it.
Yeah.
Civil partnerships are really the only thing that we've been allowed to have for a long time. It's slightly ironic that heterosexuals suddenly want something that us gays actually have. I mean, what are they going to want next? Centuries of oppression and torture? You can have that, heterosexuals.
We have taken
but
most
really,
of you CDs.
Civil partnerships are the only thing we have, apart from, of course, the ability to control the weather and flood the Lake District, which we always enjoy doing around January to February of every year.
What I love about the story is that the sort of alt-right bigot brigade can't work out whether they should be getting cross or not about this. Yes. Because here we've got these two snowflake do-gooder liberals wasting their time in the courts, and we should be having a go at them. But hang about, are they subtly having a go at the gays? Because they're saying, oh, well, that's not equality if they got something that we can't. So it's kind of like, oh, do I get cross? Do I make a... And it's sort of short circuits.
I tell you, when someone subtly has a go at the gays, it's when they take Kylie Minogue off the jukebox. thing is, I constantly read that equal marriage is perverted and it's a slippery slope and the morals of society will be destroyed. My wife texted me the other day and said, I've bought us some collapsible Tupperware. We are just as dull as you are. It's not all sex swings and dildos, I'll tell you that.
Owlishly, this is the news that a heterosexual couple have lost their Court of Appeal battle to have a civil partnership instead of a marriage. Rebecca Steinfeld and Charles Caden reject marriage on the grounds it's sexist and patriarchal. Me too, but when else do you get the chance to scam a distant cousin out of a free wok? Civil partnerships were introduced by the last Labour government, though, of course, at the time, no one realised it was going to be the last Labour government. Of course marriage is sexist. If it wasn't steeped in patriarchal tradition, I would have been able to opt for the dress of my dreams for my big day and been allowed to shine like the diamond that I am. 2 points. To Sarah. And at the end of round one, the scores are Susan and Charlie have 4, but Sarah and Lucy have 5. We start round 2 with a job advert from a recruitment agency.
Ballet Ireland is seeking a flexible candidate for the post of general manager.
Our thanks to Helen McVie from Dublin for that. Charlie, have a listen to this.
We are the goalkeepers, the #1 in the soccer team. We are the goalkeepers, we're fighting, punching, you will see. We are the goalkeepers.
Charlie, who should have kept his pie hole shut?
Ah, yes, well, I think we all know this one. Is the Sutton goalie, known as the roly-poly goalie, Wayne Shaw. Sutton, of course, who played Arsenal. It was a kind of dream match of a lifetime for them. They're in a league that is below all other leagues, so they're way, way down. But they managed to fight their way through in the FA Cup, is it?
Yes.
Yes. Sorry. They have this reserve goalie called Wayne Shaw, who's 45 and weighs 25 stone. And he was working also, he was kind of a groundsman, and he was hoovering the seats before the game because he's so devoted to this club. And I suppose he's a kind of mascot for them. And he became big news before the game. Everybody got very excited about him. And Sun Bets came up with a really wizard scheme where they offered odds 8-1 of would Wayne Shaw be caught eating a pie during the match. And so comes half-time, he thinks, well, yeah, I'll eat a pie. Be quite funny. And he told a few of his mates he was going to do it. And he ate a pie, and of course they made some money out of it on the bet. But you can't do a bet on something like that someone can just do. And, you know, it's like putting a bet of like 10-1 that Charlie Higson's going to wear a hat tomorrow. It's insane.
It'd be like if someone said to me, oh, you know, can you slip the name of a Michael Jackson album into the news quiz tonight? I wouldn't do that because it would be bad and dangerous. But, you know...
Lucy, this behaviour is off the wall.
But,
Are these your greatest hits? No, that doesn't work. Sorry.
What's happened now is that, you know, he's been investigated. He's had to resign because the club threatened to sack him because he told his mates, yeah, all right, I'll eat a pie. But he was screwed either way because whatever he did was going to affect the outcome of that bet. If he didn't eat a pie, he was playing into the Sun's hands. They were going to get all this money from the bet. And if it was like a sort of weird Kafkaesque nightmare short story.
Well, yeah, because the Sun... I mean, basically, it's Sun Bets buying the publicity. So whatever they pay out in the bets, they've got all that publicity. And it just seemed... it was so heartbreaking what happened to him, because it's always horrible to see a young sportsman cut down in his prime, the peak of physical health, you know, for using a banned substance. I mean, normally it's not steak and ale, but, you know...
The Gambling Commission Enforcement Officer and Intelligence Director, a guy called Richard Watson, said, integrity in sport is not a joke. Where has he been for the last 10 years? God's sake.
I mean, yeah.
It was just such a, you know, I can say this as an immigrant to your country, it was such a British news story. I was looking through the news stories, and basically the future of the Fourth Estate hangs in the balance in the United States. And then the first thing I saw of the British news was FA Cup pie-eating scandal.
What other hot snack controversy has there been this week involving the President of Iceland in this instance? Anyone aware of this scandal?
I don't know.
Oh, well, you've been too pie-focused. President Johannesson was taking questions from students at a high school in North Iceland, and a pupil asked him what he thought about pineapple as a pizza topping.
Oh, yes, I did read this.
Well, he went mad.
Yes.
He expressed his disdain. He said if he had the power to pass laws, honestly, I assumed he did, he said that he would ban it across the land. Yeah. Well, it's been pretty...
I think he's right.
I totally agree. I didn't know other people felt so strong.
Oh, are
It's
you
basically
mad?
anti-Hawaiian
Pineapple
sentiment.
on a pizza.
But Hawaiian.
No.
It's so exotic. It's tropical.
No.
Cheese and pineapple
No,
are
it's like-
they occur
that's
together in the wild.
That's like saying a Hawaiian pizza is exotic is like saying a Viennetta is a true taste of Italy. It's not.
Zestfully, this is the story of Sutton United substitute goalkeeper Wayne Shaw, who was sacked for eating a pie on the touchline of Sutton's clash with Arsenal after a betting website had offered odds on him doing so. What happened didn't make us look very professional, said club manager Paul Doswell, or at least that's what I thought he said. It was hard to make it out through all the pie. Shaw began eating the pie during the 83rd minute, and in a way, who can blame him? Who doesn't like a pie at the end of the day? Or if you're a footballer, who doesn't like a pie at the end of the day, at the end of the day? A new chant has sprung up on the terraces. Who ate all the pies? Who ate all the pies? Because he's wanted for questioning. If anyone is into gambling, by the way, the odds on me eating a beef Wellington during tonight's news quiz are 6-1. And I'm not saying you should definitely put a bet on, but I am wearing my eating trousers. 2 points to Charlie. Lucy, whose bush is so out of control that they've had to call the army in?
This is actually a really terrifying story. This came up in the Irish Parliament this week, that the rhododendron is engulfing the west coast of Ireland. Someone called Michael Healy-Rae, who is like a sort of superstar Irish politician, he said, the rhododendron situation in Killarney National Park has become so bad that nothing short of calling in the army is going to put it right. Anyway, so the same guy, Mr. Healy-Rae, also said that the deer population had exploded in recent years, which makes it sound more exciting than it actually is. But they've said that there's currently a deer cull happening in the national park. Which you do think, you feel sorry for children being taken out for a lovely walk in the park, stumbling across members of the army tearing up flowers and shooting Bambi. But it's a really serious... These, the rhododendron brought over to the UK, and it's now become this huge problem in Ireland. And in 2014, there were a couple who became trapped in a rhododendron forest and needed to be rescued. And I was looking at the rhododendron near us, and I was like, how could you... Only Susan and I could become trapped in a rhododendron forest.
They can grow up to 25 feet tall.
I know, it turns out.
We could get trapped in a small hedge, though.
Do you remember our bonsai nightmare,
yes.
Susan? Basically, it's the Japanese knotweed of Ireland, really. So, and it's bringing the nation to its knees. If IS really want to do damage, they don't need to bomb anyone. They just need to get a B&Q voucher.
That is the problem with rhododendrons. If you cut them, they will grow back stronger, which is why you have to win over their hearts and minds. Are you concerned, Susan?
Well, I wouldn't have been previously, Miles. I now am very concerned. Since I moved house, I now have a garden, and I've become obsessed with all gardening-related things. I have a loyalty card at my local garden centre. Yeah. 2 free hot drinks a month. They don't carry over. Don't carry over. Do you know what the problem is? I couldn't even tell you what a rhododendron really looks like. This is my problem.
It looks a bit like an azalea.
Well, they're the same.
Overconfidently, this week in the Irish Parliament, a politician has suggested that the army should be called in to do battle with rhododendrons because the plants are taking over a national park in Killarney. The Irish Army is currently deployed in 12 countries overseas, including peacekeeping in Lebanon, a NATO-led mission in Kosovo, and an out-of-control hanging basket in Chad. Michael Healy-Rae also said the park's deer population had exploded in recent years, possibly as a result of his use of landmines to deal with the moss problem. This brings back memories of the episode of Gardener's Question Time when Bob Flowerdew recommended the use of napalm as a way to control bracken. Over a 30-year period, the red deer population has increased by over 500%, but to be fair, so has the duck population. The difference is we don't interrupt picnics with our furious rutting. Not as many, anyway. 2 points to Lucy. Before we reveal the final scores, has anybody got a cutting that they'd like to share? Susan.
Daniel Taylor saw this in the Albury Parish News magazine. Play bridge with afternoon tea on Thursday 23rd March. £40 fee per group includes delicious afternoon tea. But please bring your own bridge table, tablecloth, cards and pencils.
Charlie.
Yes, this is from Matt in Norfolk, who found this sign in the toilets on a train on the Norwich to London line. Press handle downwards to flush. Do not use in stations, except in Ipswich.
Sarah.
Trevor Lewis saw this in the Wyndham and Attleborough Mercury. Rosedale Funeral Home in Attleborough to hold recruitment day.
Lucy.
This is sent in by Stuart Young in Bromley, amongst others, and it's from the BBC News website, seen in a story about the BBC's plans for bespoke news bulletins in Scotland. The proposals are in response to criticism that the current 6 o'clock news often features stories, for example on education and health, that have little relevance to Scottish audiences.
Thank you. And now let's take a look at the final score. Susan and Charlie have 8, but this week's winners are Sarah and Lucy with 9. Before we leave you, here is an extract from an article in The Guardian about sound mixer Mandy Parnell, sent in by Alan Butler in Donegal.
Born in Essex, Parnell grew up playing with records rather than dolls. My parents had a greasy calf in Wickford, and the jukebox guy would give me the old 7 inches.
And with that, goodbye.
Taking part in the news quiz were Susan Calman, Charlie Higson, Sarah Kendall and Lucy Porter. In the chair was Miles Jubb, and the news was read by me, Corrie Caulfield. The chair's script was written by Madeleine Brettingham, Benjamin Partridge and Ahia Shah, with additional material by Kiri Pritchard-McLean and Jenny Laville. The producer was Richard Morris, and it was a BBC Studios production.
If you enjoyed this week's podcast, why not download the Comedy of the Week? To find out more, please go to the website bbc.co.uk/radio4 and relax.